The shrimp smell hit me first. 20 pounds of rotting seafood baking in a Range Rover under the July sun. That's what victory smells like, apparently. I watched from my kitchen window as Owen Graves discovered my little gift, his perfectly styled hair whipping around as he gagged and stumbled backward from his precious luxury SUV. "Daddy, what's that man doing?" Chloe asked, climbing onto the chair beside me with her cereal bowl. "Learning about consequences, sweetheart." I ruffled her dark hair, the same shade as mine before the gray started creeping in. At 7, she was already sharper than most adults I knew, sharp enough to notice things her mother thought she'd hidden. 3 weeks ago, I was Eric Larkin, boring IT field engineer, devoted husband, weekend soccer dad. I fixed servers, grilled burgers, and believed my wife Marcy when she said those late nights were about closing real estate deals. I was the guy who apologized when other people bumped into me. That changed the morning, Chloe whispered. "Daddy, we need to leave. Now." I'd been loading the dishwasher, half listening to Marcy's phone call in the next room. Something about investment properties and our future together. Standard real estate talk, I thought. But Chloe's face was pale, her small hand tugging at my shirt with unusual urgency. "The man in the black car is back. He's watching us." Through the living room window, I saw it. A black SUV parked across the street, its tinted windows reflecting our house like lifeless eyes. My chest tightened. "Get your backpack," I told Chloe quietly. Marcy appeared in the doorway, phone still pressed to her ear. "Where are you going?" "I thought we were having breakfast together. Just running some errands." I kept my voice casual while my daughter grabbed her things with practiced efficiency. Too practiced. How long had she been preparing for this moment? "Eric, wait." Marcy's voice carried a note I'd never heard before. Panic, maybe. Or guilt. But we were already out the door, Chloe's hand tight in mine as we hurried to my Honda. The SUV's engine started as we pulled away. "Daddy?" Chloe's voice was small in the rearview mirror. "Are you and Mommy getting divorced?" The question hit harder than I expected. "I don't know, baby." "Why would you ask that?" "Because of Uncle Owen." Uncle Owen. Marcy's business partner, the guy with the trust fund and the condescending smile. The one who called me buddy and patted my shoulder like I was his golden retriever. "What about Uncle Owen?" Chloe was quiet for a long moment, watching the black SUV maintain its distance behind us. "He makes Mommy laugh different, and they have secrets. Kids see everything. We tell ourselves they don't understand, that they're too young to pick up on the subtle shifts in a marriage." But Chloe had been watching, listening, putting pieces together while I stumbled around blind. The police station felt like admitting defeat, but Detective Carla Ruiz made it clear this wasn't my first rodeo for her. She was 40-something, sharp-eyed, with the weary expression of someone who'd seen every variation of human stupidity. "Mr. Larkin, your daughter called this in yesterday." She slid a file across the desk. "Said a man was following your family." The photos inside made my stomach drop. Marcy and Owen at restaurants I couldn't afford, holding hands across candle-lit tables. Marcy and Owen entering a downtown hotel, her real estate blazer draped over his arm. Marcy and Owen kissing in the parking lot of Chloe's school. "How long?" I asked. "Based on these?" 6 months, minimum. "But your daughter suggests longer." I looked at Chloe, who was coloring in the corner with crayons Detective Ruiz had provided. "She knew?" "Kids always know, Mr. Larkin. They just don't always have the words." My phone buzzed. Text from Marcy. "I'm sorry. It was never supposed to get this far. Too late for sorry. Way too late." The black SUV was waiting when we left the station. This time, it didn't bother with subtlety. It accelerated hard, forcing me to swerve onto the shoulder as it roared past. My Honda shuddered to a stop against a guardrail, steam rising from the crumpled hood. Chloe was crying, the first real tears I'd seen from her through all of this. That's when something shifted deep inside me. The apologetic, accommodating Eric Larkin disappeared right there on Highway 9, replaced by someone unfamiliar, but someone I was eager to meet. Malik's auto shop occupied a grimy corner lot in the part of town where Marcy would never venture. Malik Torres had been my roommate in college before he dropped out to boost cars. Now he ran a legitimate business, but the skills from his criminal days occasionally proved useful. "Brother, you look like hell." Malik wiped grease off his hands with a red shop rag, grinning despite the circumstances. "And your car looks worse. I need a favor." "Always do. That's why I keep you around." He knelt beside Chloe, who had stopped crying but still clutched my hand. "Hey there, beautiful. Want to see something cool while your dad and I talk?" 20 minutes later, we had a plan. Nothing illegal. I had a daughter to think about. But Owen Graves was about to discover that trust fund arrogance couldn't protect him from good old-fashioned blue-collar creativity. The Riverside Grill was Owen's kind of place. Overpriced steaks and craft cocktails for people who needed everyone to know they could afford overpriced steaks and craft cocktails. Malik and I sat in his pickup across the street, watching through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows as Marcy and Owen held court at a corner table. "You sure about this?" Malik asked, adjusting the small recording device I'd borrowed from work. "She's my wife. He's destroying my family. I'm sure." We slipped in through the side entrance, taking a booth close enough to hear but far enough to avoid notice. Owen's voice carried easily. He was the type who assumed everyone wanted to hear his opinions. "The house is worth maybe $250, but Eric's too stupid to realize it," he was saying, cutting into his $40 steak. "Once the divorce is final, we'll flip it and use the profit for the Cabo place." Marcy giggled, actually giggled like a teenager. "What about Chloe?" "Kids adapt. She'll be fine with visitation every other weekend. Less interference that way." My hands clenched into fists, but Malik's warning look kept me seated. We needed everything on record. "I almost feel bad," Marcy continued. "Eric's such a good dad." "Good dads don't provide the lifestyle you deserve," Owen replied. "Besides, he'll probably thank us eventually. Set him free to find some nice little secretary who thinks Applebee's is fine dining." They laughed together, and something cold settled in my chest. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. They were planning to erase me from my daughter's life. I stood up. "Eric, don't—" Malik started, but I was already walking toward their table. Owen saw me first, his fork freezing halfway to his mouth. "Eric!" What a surprise. "We were just planning my daughter's custody schedule?" I pulled out my phone, showing the recording app. "Discussing my house's market value? Or maybe explaining how I'll thank you for destroying my marriage?" Marcy went pale. "You can't record people without permission. That's illegal. Actually, in this state, only one party needs to consent." I smiled, feeling something dark and satisfying unfurl in my chest. "And I consent." Owen recovered first, leaning back in his chair with that familiar condescending smirk. "Look, buddy, I get that you're upset, but don't call me buddy." My voice was quiet, but something in it made him stop talking. "You want my house? My wife? Fine. But you will not take my daughter." "Eric, please," Marcy whispered. "People are staring. Let them stare." I looked around the restaurant where conversations had indeed stopped. Everyone should know what kind of people they're dining with. I walked out, leaving them with their $40 steaks and the wreckage of their perfect evening. But I wasn't done, not even close. Owen's Range Rover sat in the restaurant's parking lot like a monument to unearned privilege. I'd always hated that car, the way he revved it in our driveway, the way he'd casually mention its cost, the way it represented everything I'd never be able to give my family. The key made a satisfying screech as it carved through the pristine paint from bumper to bumper. I left a note under his windshield wiper. From one disappointment to another. Petty? Absolutely. Satisfying. More than I'd expected. But when Malik and I returned to his shop, my Honda was waiting with payback, spray painted across what remained of the hood in dripping red letters. "Well," Malik said, lighting a cigarette, "guess they didn't appreciate your art critique." The next morning, I dropped Chloe at school and drove to Marcy's real estate office. She worked for DeWitt Properties, a high-end firm that specialized in million-dollar listings and maintained a reputation for absolute professionalism. "Mr. Larkin!" Ms. DeWitt herself greeted me in the marble-floored lobby. "How lovely to see you." "Marcy's with a client, but actually, I wanted to speak with you." I pulled out my phone. "About Marcy's client relations." 20 minutes later, Ms. DeWitt's face had gone from polite interest to professional horror. The recordings were damning enough, but the photos sealed it. Marcy using company resources to facilitate her affair. Owen leveraging his relationship with a DeWitt agent to access property information for personal gain. The liability exposure alone was staggering. "I'm sorry you had to learn about this," I said, pocketing my phone. "I thought the company should know." Ms. DeWitt's voice was ice-cold professional. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Mr. Larkin. We'll handle it from here." I was in my car when Marcy burst through the office doors, her face flushed with rage and humiliation. She spotted me and stormed over, yanking open my passenger door. "You bastard! You got me fired." "You got yourself fired. I just provided documentation. That recording was private." "Nothing about your affair was private, Marcy. Half the neighborhood knew before I did." She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. "What happened to you? You used to be kind. I used to be a doormat. There's a difference." That night, I put the second phase into motion. Owen lived in a downtown high-rise that screamed new money, all glass and steel and pretension. The parking garage was secured, but Malik had taught me a few things about locks over the years. The Range Rover sat in its designated spot like a sleeping beast. I'd brought supplies, 20 pounds of raw shrimp, a dozen whole fish from the market's day-old bin, and a cooler full of the most pungent cheese I could find. I worked quickly, stuffing the seafood into the air vents, under the seats, in every crevice I could find. The cheese went in last, wedged deep where it would be impossible to remove without tearing the interior apart. By morning, the smell would be unbearable. By afternoon, it would be toxic. By next week, the car would be totaled. I left another note on his windshield. "Something's fishy about your relationship with my wife." The video of Owen's meltdown went viral in our neighborhood Facebook group within hours. Someone had filmed him discovering the smell, his horrified reaction, his increasingly frantic attempts to air out the car. The comments were brutal. "Isn't that Marcy Larkin's boyfriend? Heard he got her fired yesterday. Karma's a bastard with a sense of humor. Anyone know where I can buy 20 pounds of shrimp?" I watched from my kitchen window as Owen stood in the parking lot, screaming at his phone while neighbors gathered to witness his humiliation. The Range Rover sat with all its doors open, toxic fumes shimmering in the heat. Chloe appeared beside me, drawn by the commotion. "Is that Uncle Owen?" "Former Uncle Owen," I corrected. "He looks upset. He's learning that actions have consequences." She considered this with 7-year-old seriousness. "Like when I drew on the wall and had to clean it up?" "Exactly like that. Except his wall was my family." That evening, Marcy showed up at our door. She looked terrible. Hair unwashed, makeup smeared, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Getting fired had hit her harder than I'd expected. "Eric, we need to talk." "No, we don't. It's about Chloe." I stepped onto the porch, pulling the door shut behind me. "What about her?" "I'm taking her with me." "No, you're not. I'm her mother. You're also unemployed, homeless, and in a relationship with a man who just called her an interference." Marcy's face crumpled. "You recorded that?" "I recorded everything, Marcy. Every cruel word, every plan to erase me from her life, every laugh at my expense. I never meant—" "Yes, you did. You meant every word. She tried a different approach, stepping closer with the smile that used to work on me. We could work this out. Go to counseling. Start over. With Owen? That's over. He's not who I thought he was. He's exactly who he always was. You just didn't care because he had money. The next morning brought the call I'd been expecting. Chloe's teacher, Mrs. Tran, sounded worried. Mr. Larkin? Your wife tried to pick up Chloe during lunch. She seemed agitated. Did you release her? No, sir. Chloe's on your authorized pickup list only, remember? But Mrs. Larkin was quite insistent. I was already grabbing my keys. I'll be right there. Malek met me in the school parking lot, his face grim. Got your message. She still here? Her car's over there. I pointed to Marcy's silver sedan, parked illegally in the fire lane. We found them on the playground. Marcy knelt beside Chloe, speaking in urgent whispers, while my daughter stood rigid with confusion and fear. Mommy, I want to wait for Daddy. We can't wait, baby. We have to go now. Chloe, I called out, and my daughter's face flooded with relief. Marcy spun around, her expression shifting from desperation to defiance. She's coming with me. No, she's not. I walked closer, Malik flanking me. You don't have custody, Marcy. You don't even have a job. I have rights. You have nothing. My voice was chillingly calm. You threw it all away for a trust fund brat who's probably already looking for his next victim. Chloe ran to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. Over her head, I stared at my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, and felt nothing but contempt. This isn't over, Marcy said. Yes, it is. That night, I sat Chloe down for the conversation I'd been dreading. Daddy, are you and Mommy getting divorced? Yes, sweetheart. We are. She nodded solemnly. Because of Uncle Owen? Because your mother made choices that hurt our family. Will I still see her? If you want to. But you'll live with me. Chloe was quiet for a long moment, processing. Finally, she looked up with those serious dark eyes. Will you be sad? About the divorce? No, baby. I'll be relieved. Good. You smile more now. Out of the mouths of babes. The final confrontation came 3 days later. I was working in my home office when the security system Malik had installed started screaming. Motion sensors, door alarms, window alerts. Someone was trying to break in. I grabbed the baseball bat from my closet and crept toward the living room. Through the window, I could see Owen's replacement car, a rented Mercedes, parked in my driveway. Marcy's sedan sat behind it. They'd come together. How romantic. The back door stood open, splintered wood around the locked testament to Owen's desperation. I could hear them moving through the house, whispering harshly. Where would he keep the papers? Try his office. We need those recordings deleted. I smiled in the darkness. The recordings were backed up in 3 separate cloud accounts, but they didn't know that. Looking for something? I stepped into the hallway, bat in hand. Owen spun around, his face flushed with panic and rage. You destroyed my life! You destroyed your own life. I just documented it. That car cost more than you make in a year. And now it's a very expensive dumpster. Seems appropriate. Marcy appeared behind him, her face pleading. Eric, just delete the recordings. We'll disappear. You'll never see us again. I'm counting on never seeing you again. But I'm keeping the recordings. Owen stepped forward, trying to look threatening. You think you're so smart? You think you won? I know I won. Your girlfriend is unemployed and unemployable. Your car is toxic waste. Your reputation is ruined. And my daughter is safe from both of you. Your daughter? Owen laughed bitterly. You really think she's yours? The words hit like a physical blow. I stared at Marcy, who had gone white as paper. Tell him, Owen continued. Tell him the truth about Chloe. Marcy's voice was barely a whisper. Owen, don't. She's not your kid, buddy. Never was. The bat slipped from my hands, clattering to the floor. 7 years of memories crashed through my mind. Chloe's first steps, her first words, bedtime stories and scraped knees and proud moments at school plays. You're lying. DNA test says otherwise. Owen pulled out his phone, showing me a document. Had it done last month. Funny thing about trust fund brats, we're paranoid about paternity. I looked at the results, the numbers swimming before my eyes. Then I looked at Marcy, who was crying silently. Is it true? She nodded. Who? Does it matter? Who? My college boyfriend. Before we met. I didn't know until recently. The world tilted sideways. Everything I thought I knew, everything I'd fought for, everything that mattered, all of it built on a lie. Then I heard footsteps on the porch. Daddy? Chloe's voice called out. I forgot my backpack. She appeared in the doorway, still in her school uniform, confused by the scene before her. Owen smirked. Marcy sobbed, and I stood there holding the wreckage of my life. But when Chloe looked at me, her face lit up with the same love, the same trust, the same absolute faith she'd always shown. And I realized something that made Owen's revelation meaningless. Biology doesn't make a father, love does, commitment does, showing up every day does. Hey, sweetheart. I knelt down, pulling her into a hug. How was school? Good. Why is Mommy crying? Because she's sad about some choices she made. Chloe looked at Owen with the frank assessment only children can manage. Are you the man who makes Mommy sad? Owen's smirk faltered. You should leave, Chloe said simply. This is our house. And that's when I knew I'd already won. Not because of the recordings or the ruined car or the public humiliation. I'd won because the little girl who called me daddy, biology be damned, trusted me to protect her. You heard her? I said, standing up. Get out. Owen's face twisted with rage. This isn't over. Yes, it is. I picked up the bat again. And if I ever see you near my daughter again, the next thing I ruin won't be your car. They left, Marcy casting one last desperate look over her shoulder. The door closed behind them, with a finality that felt like freedom. Chloe tugged at my shirt. Daddy, are we okay? I looked down at my daughter, not biological, but mine in every way that mattered, and smiled. Yeah, baby, we're perfect. 6 months later, Owen moved to another state after his trust fund was frozen pending investigation into some creative accounting. Marcy remarried quickly, a desperate grab for financial security that lasted 3 months. And me? I got full custody, a new appreciation for my own strength, and the best daughter a man could ask for. Sometimes the walls have to come down before you can build something better.